Next step is going to integrate this terrain based on our bridge. So I'm going to focus now here on this terrain input. And first thing, I would like to get information on where I would have a bridge. I would use the mask by object and use this as my input. And then I want to have the shapes here. So now I have masked out the region where I will be having a bridge. Now I would like to do a second mask by object. And I want to have then my third input, which will be sort of the opening in the bridge. And I want to subtract this. So combining with existent, set this to subtraction. So in here, we know that this is the area where the player has an opening to walk in. Now, based on this mask, I'm going to use a noise. So height field noise. And fill in our mask. And as you can see, it will immediately go down. So let's disable the center noise. Now it goes up. We want to then set our amplitude to number 1. So it's actually bumping up this a little bit. So compared to our previous terrain, you can see it's just bumping up that a little bit. Now you can play around here further on with the noise if you want to, but the only thing that I mainly was looking for is to just bump it up. So with this amplitude, I can then control how intense we can pull up the terrain. But further here, we can then use a blur. So height field blur. And in this case, I want to actually enable the aware blur, so mask awareness. So as you can see, in this area, it sort of like really cuts in this area. But if you want to do awareness, it sort of like restores some of the area better. And then we blur it just a little, maybe even lower than 10, maybe 8. Then here I want to do an erode node. So get some nice integration. And in here, we want to, of course, disable our visualization and disable our cache, so it's sort of more real time. Then I'm also going to freeze my frames at number 3 again, so I just have a little subtle effect going on. Then here again, I might want to reset the terrain, so we are having the up-to-date version. And I want to use the masks here again, so we have erosion, so we have the erode node working around these masks. So going back here, maybe indeed, maybe lower this effect again. And I want to use a mask on this. So mask. Then I want to go to an advanced, and here again, where we have the precipitation, let's set this to mask and use our mask. So now we have a more localized effect there. So if it's not intense enough, we can just play around here with the number of frames or with the values we have here. I'm also working with a low resolution terrain. So if I would switch to my other terrain, to my higher quality one. So this is my higher quality one. And I might have here some previous layers. So I might have to blast it away to have no confusion there. And as you can see, we have some details coming from this. So in this case, I also might place the bridge where I would have my walking path. So I might have to move my bridge so I can have a walking path there. One thing I also like to do here afterwards is using the copy layer nodes. So I'm going to save this information where my bridges are. So I want to save the mask to a new layer called bridges. So later I can always call where my bridges are placed on the terrain, and then I can for example say like, oh yeah, don't place any trees there or any foliage there because we will have a bridge over here. What could also be cool is we can do another copy layer, and we can actually, for example, view our debris. So we can say our debris needs to be in our mask. And now I have here It's very subtle, or information about the debris, or I could view other details if I want to. If I want to, for example, see the water, we don't have that much water, it's also super subtle in here. This can also be interesting. So since it's very subtle, let's do a remapping. So height fill remap and set layer to mask, and now we can boost these values with the map. So as you can see, we can get these interesting details here. What can also be useful here again is the height field combine node, combining mask. So I want to place that here, and I can, for example, have the debris that I previously talked about in there. And we also have a post-processing here, so we can boost these values. So I want to add my debris in here. So I have that thing there. So this gives us a quite interesting mask if I later want to place, for example, rocks around my bridge or other items. We can then have a very specific localized effect here. Like maybe we have like rocks falling down here. So it could be cool to see it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a copy layer here again. And I'm going to save this mask. I'm just going to call this my bridge debris, for example. So this is like area where we would have debris or stones or something else. So this can come in later handy if you want to place something specific there. Now let's also merge these results to just get a quick look of what's going on. I can also see now that my template geometry is actually placed too high, so I should move that downwards. On the other side, we have some subtle integration, and if we want to make this more intense, we can change this. So in here in the noise, let's set this to 3, so it's a bit better. What we can also do here, so maybe we want to expand the mask. So let's use a mask blur over here. What we can actually do here is we can expand our mask, so just a little bit. Maybe also copying this mask blur and set it to blur again and do a subtle blur there. So now we have this result. So now this result would probably be way different than before. So now we have this integration. So this is a better integration, I think, but it's way more intense. So I like this more, but I'm just going to lower down here, probably this scale, and set back to maybe 1.5, so it's more subtle. So we have some little dirt here that's like stacking up on the edges, so it's like better integrated there, and we still have a nice mask around the area. Now let's also make a digital asset. I've implemented most of the features I want to have, and now here I have this subnetwork. I'm going to right click, create digital asset, and I'm going to call this procedural terrain, and this is then for creating some bridges. Now our parameter menu is here, and again I want to set the outputs to 3 because I want to output terrain, geometry, and instances. And we can also have parameters. So I don't have that many parameters I would like to see, but we can again take as much as you want. I can here have the scaling here of this, for example, the detail mesh. Like you can do here the tile scale. I think that's already a decent name. Then what we can also do is the poly count, so the percentage to keep, maybe that should be the one on top. Then I could also create a quick folder for the IV, so IV, and what we can do is create a seed value of the IV. We can also create how much starting points we should have. So starting points, So most of the time I actually want to keep this one. We can expose more options here, like the rotation, random scale, and so on. So we can always control that. So I might do minimum and maximum scaling. Then maybe here for the terrain, I would like to have maybe this amplitude value. So terrain integration. And I want to set the range from maybe maximum to 10. That would be way too much already. So these are just some basic values. Now let's also create here our output nodes. So in here, output 1 is our terrain. Output number 2 will be our geometry. And output 3 will be our instances. So now, when we have set our outputs, I'm going to handle our instancing. So there are two things I want to instance is the ivy. So I had some ivy here, and I've also placed down here these models on top of it, but I want to replace them with instances. So I instance that piece instead of a unique geometry. Now from previous video, I already made a instance setup, so I'm going to grab that. So I'm going to go over here, and grab this basic instance setup. So now copy pasting the setup here in case you would not have this. So I start out with an add node, and important here is to remove all geometry. So if I input my points here, I will only have points and not any other information. Then I'm going to assign a up factor if needed, a p-scale value if it needs it as well. Then I'm going to clean up all the unnecessary attributes. I only want to have these 3 attributes as my main attributes. You can add more if you would want that. And then further here, we're going to assign a path to where this model is. So I plugged it in over here right now, and I already noticed that I actually already have a up and a p-scale value. So I'm just going to skip these nodes so we don't have any conflicting information there. Then I'm going to copy paste this network. And my next instance is here the ivy, so I might create some more spacing here. So let's double check what information we have from this ivy. So I have a normal p-scale and an up vector. So I don't need to create any new information. Now let's merge these together. I'm gonna use a group. And this group, of course, needs to be a point group because we're working with only points. And I'm gonna call this instance. Then I can merge this over here, but also important, we need to delete the lines from our previous models because we are now switching them with our instances. Now here as output, I have my bridge with all the models on them. So I will use a split node, and I will split based on that group I just created called the instancing points. So let's reverse that. So these inputs will be over here. And now we have separated that nicely. Then also, of course, I need to set here the correct mesh. So let's go to Unreal. Here in Unreal, I have the model that I want to use. So right click on the model and then copy our reference. Then back into Houdini. With this reference copied, we're going to paste it over here in our attribute. Then same then for our ivy. So looking at my ivy model and copy pasting the path. So that's set up right. Then let's go here one level up, and I will also create here these switch nodes. So switch. So I have one for the terrain. Then I have one for the geometry, which will be the bridge. And then I have one for my instancing points. So now by default, my terrain will be coming from here. And if the switch is on, I will view my bridge terrain. Then for my geometry, I'm going to place down a null node, so by default it will be off, and when it's on, show the results. Then lastly, instances, also same process, like this. So you can switch them on or off. Now we can also redirect these lines, so let's redirect them to the inputs. And now I need to create a new geometry, so I will merge this at the end here. So we'll place that down here, so it's merged here in the end. So here in the end merge, we will have 3 lines: instancing, geometry, and our terrain. So these are the 3 main outputs. Also important to know is that our geometry needs a normal. So now also let's go here to our property menu and add a property for this. So parameters, I would like a new folder for my bridge. So I'm going to create here the parameters to toggle everything on or off. So I'm going to give it the name again, enable, switch this to a toggle, press apply. Then I'm going to copy paste this to the other ones as well. They are all linked. Then I can again here copy paste some of the parameters. What you could do is you could quickly add all these parameters in here as well. I haven't showed that before, so you can go to from nodes. You can search that node. So in our case, this node is called subnetwork 1. So the name is not procedural terrain bridges. That's not the name. The name is subnetwork. So you're going to have to search it here as well. Open this. And what we find at the bottom is our parameters. So you could select them all and drag them in here if you want to, or you can specifically export a few of them if you want to. Then something else here, I want to replace this cube with a cube from Unreal. So I'm going to use here the object merge again to then input from game engine. And I will use the if switch here again. So if switch, and do the same trick that we did before. So if the number of points from input 0 are equal to 0, then I will switch to number 1. I'll copy the switch then over here. And copy the object merge as well. So then exposing the settings. So here, so I would call this main bridge shape. And then the other one is then actually for subtracting from the bridge. Then I'm almost done to start testing. What I'm missing at the moment now is here, when I output my geometry, I need to assign a material to my geometry, just like I did here to my terrain. We assigned a material to our terrain, so we need to do the same here for our geometry. So type in Unreal material. Then I will go into Unreal and copy paste the correct material. So here's that material that I've used for my detail meshing. So I will, of course, copy the reference and assign that in Houdini. So here, pasting the reference and connect this in the network. Then saving the asset. And let's see if everything works in Unreal. So here we are back in Unreal. I have my digital asset. I see my curves to edit my terrain and so on. So everything is still there as I left off. I only updated the material. I give it a better pass and look here. So there is some procedural grass going on. There is some better material layering and so on. So that just mainly Unreal work. Now further here, what I'm interested in is then testing out my bridge. So now it's not being enabled, so press enable and it will probably take a few seconds to calculate. And as you can see, I have the bridge here. So that's pretty cool. So it's still here. I have this ivy, so that basic ivy generator. So it looks okay. It's not, I would say, perfect. I could still like tweak some of the rotations, maybe scale it a bit down. But for first look, I'm actually okay with it. Also here at the top, I have these tiles laid out nicely. So that's cool. But also notice that some of my other props are actually gone. So I might have to double check what went wrong. And of course, this will not output all the instancing points because I forgot to actually merge the previous result. So I have the instances coming off from my terrain and railway. And I want to combine these instances here with my new instances, which are these ivy points and so on. So of course, I was not seeing the full result. So a small tweak there, making sure that is merged here. So that should work nicely then. Now my tool is rebuilt, and as you can see, indeed everything is now back. So I have a nice railway going through this tunnel. So that's pretty cool. And now let's put our tool more to the test, and I want to test out here my custom inputs. That's what I'm mainly interested in here. So I'm gonna just grab here our basic cubes from Unreal. And let's place, for example, a bridge there. So I'm going to create a very large one to just test out if everything works nicely. Then I want to copy a second box, and I want to make sure that we have here a hole that we can walk through. Or what you could also do is you could automatically use the curve that I have and automatically sort of connect the curve from the rail with the bridge. That could also be possible in that system. And what is also possible is that you normally should be able to rotate this as well. Like you can rotate this and it should still hold up nicely. So maybe I give it a little twist here. So let's go to a digital asset. We're going to set this to world outliner because we want to pick an object from the world. Now automatically it will start cooking again. So we might have to disable here. So it's automatically cooking for the moment. So I can just decently add my models. So we can get quickly these boxes assigned. So select object. So this is my main shape. And this is then my second shape, which will be subtracted from the bridge. Now that is assigned, and let's rebake the asset. And this is our result. And as expected, it worked nicely. So I have a bridge, so you can also see that it is not perfectly straight. So it can handle some more angles. So it's pretty cool. We also in here have automatically then our ivy. So that works really well in this case. So everything works really nicely. Also, you can see here some of the integration. So we have the terrain going upwards here. So it's pretty cool to see that everything is working. And if everything is set up actually correctly, we can just press play now. And we can then walk around it and go through the bridge actually. So in here, you can just walk in there. I can also walk up this mountain. If I have colliders here on this model, I can then walk on the bridge. So the collider on top of this is basically controlled by this model because it's just an instancing of that model. And that's it for this part. So the bridge is now fully integrated. You have parameters and placeholders to actually control with boxes where the bridge should be. So you can get quickly these bridges around our levels. So I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.